it's just really trippy because all of a sudden you've gone off the street from a cab into a lavish room and you're shaking hands with King Charles III about half a foot away from his face, and it's just like, this is really weird.
Wow.
Hello and welcome to the Abroad in Japan podcast, probably the best way of learning about life in Japan without actually being in Japan. I'm your host Chris Broad, and we're joined as always by England's top Japan enthusiast, Mr. Pete Dawson himself. Pete, how the devil are you doing? What's going on?
Before we start, Chris, how am I meant to address you right now? How do I kind of talk to you now? You become a changed man. You become something very different, but before our eyes. What am I supposed to sort of say when meeting you? Now you're a different person. You're like a beautiful butterfly now that has ceased to be a caterpillar.
You are to call me Colin In Japan, as the first person did when I arrived in Japan 2 days ago at Haneda Airport. I came out, I had the worst flight of my life after a pretty good week, right? Turbulence galore. I walked out like pretty dishevelled. And you know, with people that hold the placards saying like your name for the taxis or whatever.
Yeah.
I came out and a guy waiting there, I think it was Australia, just went, "Oh mate, Colin In Japan. I can't believe it's you, mate. Oh my God." And I was like, what? And I just went along with it. I was like, "That's right, it's Colin In Japan. Have a good one. See you
Colin In
later."
Japan.
So
it's
I'm Colin In
channel.
Japan. The Right Honourable Colin In Japan. Yes, clutching my filthy non-alcoholic beer. For those of you watching on YouTube.
I wondered whether now you've met the Emperor, you've decided to you've decided that it's not going to get any better than this, so you've decided to become an alcoholic. So you're drinking a non-alcoholic lager. Who is it from? Who's the brand? Because my favourite non-alcoholic lager is actually Asahi.
Is it?
And honestly, it's good, man. Like out of all of I love me fizzy lager, but yeah, Asahi's an absolute banger.
I think it's because Asahi, whether it's alcoholic or not, tastes the same. It still tastes like carbonated nothing. I don't like Asahi. Rubbish, filth.
The only beer that's ever sponsored the show, and you're giving it both barrels just because you've unbelievable.
I love the deep umami flavours of Asahi. It's my most favourite beer. This is Suntory. All free, no calories actually, no calories, no carbs, no fun.
No calories. It can't have no calories.
It's no calories.
That would take all of the taste out of the beer. Good God, it can't, surely.
It's
wild.
the best one. It's the best one. I think it was Connor that recommended this to me. I hate to I don't drink beer that often. I don't even know if I bought this or not. I just found it in my fridge in the studio. We have a few people that work here. Yeah, Connor brought it in and left it there. But I actually hate to admit, on the cycle, Connor was sort of like at the end of every day he retired to his bedroom or his hotel room with like a couple of non-alcoholic beers, and I was like, what's the point of drinking non-alcoholic beer? Just get the real thing. He's like, I can't drink, I'm cycling. And what's the point of drinking non-alcoholic beer then? He's like, I need the taste of beer to be able to sleep or something. So
good sign.
So I'm turning into Connor though. I figured it would be nice to drink something like beer, but not actually drink beer on the podcast because that would end badly. So there we go.
But do you think it might be like a kind of Pavlovian response, and you're just going to get slowly sort of fake trolleyed, like your fake cup noodles next to you? Going to start eating the fake food.
I remember that happened at school. We gave someone some ginger beer, which is non-alcoholic, and he drank it all, thinking it was like some sort of alcoholic drink, and he did slowly get drunk until we pointed out there's nothing in it.
Cider lollies. It's like cider lollies was a big thing back in the day.
Cider lollies sounds right, my alley. Well, I've also got this. When you're having a turbulent flight and you're anxious, you have to eat all the Haribo. So I've got this big old packet of Travel Edition Haribo. Too much Haribo, some might say. They are delicious, though. There's a few left in there. But as I was leaving Heathrow, I was like, I need one British item. I need something to commemorate this trip to the UK. And I walked away with the Haribo.
Good stuff.
That was my journey. But yeah, we'll get into the whole Buckingham Palace thing in a bit. I guess that's the news story of the week. I went to Buckingham Palace, and it was pretty weird and trippy, and I don't know how it happened. And I got to shake hands with the King, the Emperor, and various politically interesting people, and not so... Yeah, but anyway, I've got to be careful what I say as well, I guess, on this podcast.
Yeah, because you started some new businesses with these people as well, so now you're part of that rarefied atmosphere. It's like the Masons. Abroad Japan has joined the Masons.
That's right. I want all the deals. I want all the secret deals. But
the Bullingdon Club boys.
Oh god! But and I met him. But one of the coolest things going back was I did get to see Pete. We hung out in London, and Pete turned up in his Toyota Century, and I have to say, we've talked about it. This like 1990s, 1980s weird car. When I saw it, Pete, I was actually quite impressed by it. There was some really quirky features in it that I just didn't know existed, and you pointed out to me. I think my image of a Toyota Century, I always thought it's like the old-fashioned Toyota cars, the old taxis you have in Tokyo, right? The old ones, the old black cabs, and it's not. It's like the car for the ambassador, and it's like a really impressive car. It would have been like 25 years ago. It's got a TV set that looks like a 1980s TV in the back, and one of the weirdest features I noticed was on the passenger seat. The seat, like the middle of the seat, folds down, and I've never seen this, right? The seat's still upright, but a part of the seat in the middle, the back, folds down. So the person behind can poke their feet through and treat the passenger seat like a footrest, presumably for like ambassadors or people of importance.
We don't have to imagine it, Chris. Here's a clip of you driving me around.
I need to go to Bar Rockaholic.
Coming up, sir.
A good time was had by all with my new taxi driver, Chris Broad, because he may be in London just to, go and see the Emperor or the King or whoever, but he still takes the time to drive old Pete Donny Donaldson around town in a Toyota Century. It was lovely to see you, and it was lovely for you to see the car that I've been talking about for absolutely ages. It didn't smell of cigarettes, did it? I've managed to get rid of most of the cigarette smell. I also discovered at the weekend there was this mystery button saying on or off on the dashboard, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to get a butter knife and I'm going to open the whole sort of panel up and see what exactly this thing is powering, because every time I got in the car I've switched it on and off, and I've been trying to figure out what's changed about the car. Turns out
so ominous.
the button had been removed ages ago. It didn't go anywhere. There was no wiring to it. So I've just been sending myself absolutely insane with a mystery button. I think that's quite a good little gag for people, though. If you're in somebody like a mate's car, install a little button that goes on or off, and then just see where their head goes. Because they'll be like, I don't know what's happened. I don't know what this button... It arrived, and I don't know what it powers. I don't know what people have done to me.
You should connect it to like a speaker, and when people click it, it's like initiating launch sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Like an ejector seat or something.
And then they get covered in some spaghetti or something. I don't know, like some sort of prank car. That's awesome, though.
It was good to see Chris, and it was good to see Chris sort of adhering as best he can to English time, because obviously you were only home, and this is your home, Chris, I'm afraid. You were only home for like 2.5, 3 days or something. It was a very short period of time.
It was a bit longer than that. It was a bit longer.
And you...
It was about a week. It was about 7 days.
Right.
Yeah, it was like the shortest trip I've ever had, though. It was the shortest trip I've ever had to the UK, and wasn't ideal, because I want to come back later in the year, right, in a few months, and I don't think there's anything that would have coaxed me into coming to the UK other than this, and maybe, that's it. I can't think of anything, any other reason. Or Pete's car. Yeah, I didn't... It caught me off guard, right? So the invite came through, and it was like an email about a month ago, and it was like, for the attention of the secretary of Abroad Japan. I'm like, secretary? I have a secretary? What is this?
Wow, I'm your secretary.
I should have forwarded it on to you. But I thought it was like spam, and I was like, I'll just delete that then. And then I opened it, and it was like, for the attention of Chris Broad, there's a state banquet, yada yada yada, send us your address or whatever. And
so if there are any Nigerian scammers out there, I would say send Chris a message, because if you are the deposed king's son, it sounds like you get through the bullshit filter on Chris's emails.
Well, I did have a few people read over it, and somebody I know who knows like Buckingham Palace stuff, and I sort of went, "Is this real?" And they were like, "Yes." And I was like, "Oh shit!" And it was really trippy. It came out of the blue. Thank God I didn't delete it, because that would have been a real fuck-up on my part. And away we went. We'll get to that in a bit as the news story of the week. But on the way back, I just had the worst flight ever. It was. I felt like it was a cruel twist of fate. As somebody who doesn't like flying, right? It's a 14-hour journey coming back from the UK, and we got on the plane, and then before taking off, they were like, "There's the biggest thunderstorm in the universe, and it's happening right now. So we're going to delay the flight by 2 hours. So we're just going to sit on the runway." So we sat on the runway for 2 hours. So that was great. And then we took off, and I thought, I'm sure the thunderstorm's gone now. We've waited 2 hours. It hadn't gone, and we flew. It was like flying through a fucking tornado. The plane. I thought, like, isn't this a cruel joke? It's like a Alanis Morissette song. Like, I've met the king, and then a day later I die in a plane crash.
People write songs about you. Brilliant.
It's like rain. It was like, oh, fucking hell, of course I'm going to die now. Like a day after something good happening. But the plane was like terrifying. It was like shaking in a way that I've never experienced before. I used to love flying. And then I flew to China on Beijing once on a jumbo jet. And while having dinner, the plane just dropped out of the sky and everyone screamed and things smashed. And up until then, I loved flying. It was like my favourite thing. I wanted to be a pilot when I was a teenager. And then from that moment, instead of going, planes are fun, you can eat food in the sky, I realised that, wait a minute, I'm on a magic flying death trap, 40,000 feet, and I can't get out. I can't escape. So, ever since then, and that was about like 10 years ago now, actually, I've sort of been quite anxious on planes. When turbulence hits, I sort of freak out a bit. And it's annoying because it's not something you can control, right? It's like a fight or flight response that your body has. And when you're in a thunderstorm for like an hour, going over... It was like 3 thunderstorms that are conjoined into one megastorm. And it was awful. It was really quite awful. And I don't want to fly again. But luckily the Haribo saw me through. I did think, I'll drink some alcohol, maybe I can like... Sometimes I take sleeping tablets to help knock me out, and didn't have them, forgot to bring them. And I was like, the one time we needed these. So I like tried to drown myself in Haribo and like vodka, and that didn't work. It just made my heart palpitate even more. So if you're having a panic attack at 40,000 feet, don't drink vodka, don't eat Haribo. Just try and talk to the captain.
I know, but you can have a alcohol-free lager. I think that's fair to say. I would say, like, if you can defeat this flight, if you've sort of taken the plane ride from hell, to use WWE parlance, I think you can do any of them really, because you've seen the worst of it and you're fine. Because turbulence don't kill unless you're in the unless you're not in your seat, I suppose. But yeah,
100%. And
it's getting worse, though, apparently. It's getting worse.
It is getting worse because of global warming and whatnot. But, it's annoying because I thought, for the most part, I'd sort of conquered a lot of that anxiety over flying. It's got better, actually, since the very turbulent Cessna flight with Joey over Japan's most active volcano. I think that was, like, the ultimate way to get over one's fear of flying a few years ago in Kyushu. And it's got better since then, but then this just sort of reset it a little bit. And... yeah, but it's frustrating because I'm like gripping the seat, looking out the window like, oh my God, what's going on? And like Charlotte's sitting there eating some popcorn nearby, just, watching a film, looking happy. And most people are just looking relatively peaceful. And I'm like, what the fuck?
She's from the Americas. People fly all the time in the Americas. They could just sort of they commute in the morning and go home at night.
That's true. That is true. But before we get to Buckingham Palace and all that jazz, we got a story this week from Matthew and Carolina from London, who begins, Dear Chris and Pete, on our first night visiting the beautiful Kanazawa, I love it, one of my favourite cities in Japan, we decided to dress up a bit for a nice dinner on the town. We didn't think it would be difficult to find restaurants with space for 2 hungry foreigners, but alas, every place we visited was full. The miserable prospect of having to resort to Family Mart onigiri and stale fami chiki loomed large in our imagination. Hang on a minute, stale fami chiki? How dare you? That's the finest haute cuisine of the land. It's never stale, it's fresh. It's battered and it's so oily that after 10 years it'd still be edible. After 10 minutes and several failed attempts entering various eateries, we noticed an unassuming little sushi place on a side street with a couple of spaces at the counter available and only a few patrons. Sod it, we thought. How bad could it be? To our complete delight, what followed was one of the most glorious meals either of us had ever had. By chance, we'd happened on one of the best sushi joints in Kanazawa. The classically trained chef was not just wonderful at his job, but an absolute gent and a natural performer. The clientele engaged us in friendly conversation with much Google Translate and gesticulation to make up for the language barrier. We walked out full, tipsy, and incredibly glad we'd stumbled upon this magical place. Have either of you had... oh God. This happens when you drink too much non-alcoholic beer. Have either of you ever chanced upon a brilliant food experience in Japan? Did you ever snatch a fantastic evening from the jaws of Konbini defeat? Thank you both for your brilliant podcast. All the best, guys. Matthew and Carolina from London. I mean, they make convenience stores sound like the devil. They're not that bad. They're good.
This isn't the point of the email. The question was, have you ever snatched some culinary win from the jaws of defeat, Chris? You can't be. I will not have you distort this into another love letter to Fami Jeki. This is very much, have you ever had a great time in a restaurant that you didn't expect to be that good? All the time, surely, Chris. I mean, you walk into a place, you have no idea what kind of food they're serving, and you sort of go, right, what's this place got for us? And it's usually bloody good.
I mean, my middle name's Culinary Win. I mean, I've got Harry Bones, so 3 or 4 left. Yeah. 3 or 4 left in there. I will say that there was a nice when we did a Journey Across Japan special spin-off to Hokkaido years ago. Myself, Joey, Natsuki. It was still like the height of COVID a little bit, and we ended up in this place called Lake Toya. A beautiful lake, and I think we filmed a scene there where we had some curry at Mog curry, and it's a really great place. They do wonderful stuff. It's the local soup dish of Hokkaido, of course, and we stayed there the night. And I remember trying to find somewhere for dinner, and like this, it's full. And in Japan, especially if it's like a Friday or Saturday, it's literally impossible to get a seat anywhere unless you reserve. It's really difficult, and we hadn't reserved. And then we found on Google like a little yakitori shop. And it was like hidden down this alleyway behind what can only be described as a piece of corrugated iron. And like in Japanese architecture, there's the sort of, it's either very good and like earthquake resistant and amazing,
or looks like it has been hit by an earthquake.
Exactly. Or it looks like a sort of World War II Anderson shelter, like built to survive air raids, and they're sort of like corrugated iron and a bit like rusty,
yellowed with smoke.
Yeah, smelling pretty awful. But we sort of cracked open this corrugated iron down this alleyway, and it was a really nice little yakitori shop with a bar counter, a tatami mat with a sort of family having fun, and the owners were very old. They must have been at least 120 years old or something, and they were very nice. They were moving very slowly as they prepared the food. This is a nice thing, at mum and pop shops in Japan. You do find like elderly folks still working, never quite knowing when to retire, or maybe they can't retire. I don't know.
And kind of generationally as well, you'll have like I think we went to one around Mount Aso, this little kind of ramen restaurant, soba restaurant actually, and we had the most delicious food, and it was like grandma, mum, little baby running around. It was like a lovely moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a family-run business, and like it's nice when that happens. In the case of this place, their children weren't there. It was just them, and it meant that the cooking was very, very slow. And I remember every order, it was very slow. But the food was good. They just put some chicken on charcoal grill, job done. And we very much enjoyed that. So that was nice. So you never know what you might find hidden behind a corrugated iron doorway. My favourite story is of you going to Niigata, where you went into like an inn and then started talking to everyone about things. What was it? You went to Niigata and it was just you alone, right?
There was, I think Niigata is like one of those places where nobody really goes unless they've done everywhere else, I suppose, or maybe if they live there, I would say. And it's popping in. There was like the Sake Museum and Sake Brewery, and I think this old lady was sort of bashing out these amazing dishes and stuff. So I had a little chat with her and the other patrons and stuff, and they were really sort of like, "What are you doing here?" It was just a really, really nice experience, I think. For obviously Japan's very over tourists or touristed, as they tell us this year. They don't seem like they're tourists this year, but it's lovely to sort of go off the beaten track a little bit and just walk into a place. And I remember like my mate Sam, he's like he's a food photographer, and he's got his own studio, and he basically with like a Calagas, big range sort of grill, and he's got all of like the lighting and stuff just to pretend it's outside, it's daytime and stuff like that to do the different moods. And he just takes restaurants in London and brings the chefs in. They cook the food, and then he basically photographs them and makes them look amazing for the menus and stuff. And he's a really talented bloke. But he did when we were in I think it would have been Illinois somewhere. We were doing like a football ramble tour, and we were playing a show in Illinois, and he said to me, I sort of went to a Mexican around the corner. I just walked in, and he said, did you not even like Google like the Mexican, the restaurant? And I was like, no. He goes, what, you just walked in to any old place and sat down? He's going, yes Sam, that's what normal people do. They just walk in and they either have a lovely time or they have a terrible time. Either way, food is food, and at the end of the day, we all know how it ends up.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know if I share your vision. Even I look at the review.
I know.
I looked at the review for this place. It was still good. But I suppose in Japan, good or bad, you're always going to have an okay time, unless you end up somewhere like bloody chicken sashimi restaurant, as we did on the cycle. But that's half the fun of travelling Japan. It is walking into these like kind of remote restaurants and seeing what happens. And more often than not, the staff are very welcoming and awesome and brilliant. Unless you end up in Wakanai on the first day of a cycle, when the people don't want you coming in the restaurant, as I talked about in a previous episode with Connor. But yes, so onto the subject of Buckingham Palace.
What's the Google reviews for that? 5 stars.
Exactly. 5 stars.
Very
quite
fancy.
Good. I will say Buckingham Palace exceeded my expectations in terms of the interior. I don't know what I was expecting, really. I knew it'd be good, but I didn't think it would be that ostentatious and lavish like the interior of Buckingham Palace. I don't think I've ever seen it. I don't think I ever looked it up before. I always wanted to go, and I know they do like tours in the summer where you can go around it, which luckily I don't have to do now. But they got the most incredible paintings, the most meticulous woodwork. There's gold everywhere, trinkets. It is very lavish and very, very impressive. And I still can't believe I set foot in there.
Chris took his clothes off and ran around it like that film Saltburn at the end. Murder on the dance floor. Oh my God. Kill the group. Hey, imps, how you doing?
What a disgusting image. Fucking hell. But so I got the invite and I was like, shit, got to go back to the UK for this. It's the one thing. What I found out about this sort of thing is when I speak to friends, family, viewers, acquaintances about things I've done, it's quite hard to impress people these days. And I think I don't know why that is. People aren't easily impressed with anything. People
have dim views on content creators, I think, as well.
That as well.
I've heard about Johnny Somali. He's ruined it for everyone.
We're on the same level, Johnny and Somali and I. We're both influenced, of course. And I'm like, I got a book that did well. It's the best-selling book, innit? And they're like, I did a cycle. We together with Connor and Pete, we raised $1 million for charity. And I'm like, I got invited to Buckingham Palace. And they're, and oh my God, the response from this, blows anything I've ever done out of the water, which is annoying because I haven't really done anything. I just got an invite to go and eat some ham and drink a bit of wine.
It's the legitimacy of the the world, isn't it, I suppose, to a certain extent.
Guess so,
I would sort of say, I used to be a radio DJ, and Sarah, my partner, is a radio DJ. And whenever we're having a conversation about people's jobs with people we've never met before, everyone just wants to... I mean, everyone wants to talk to Sarah anyway because she's brilliant and beautiful. But like,
she's cool.
Nobody wants to talk to me because I look like a little rat boy. But like, I just don't have that job anymore. The older people, the older generation, really respect. So it's that legitimacy of the old world, and like you cannot, you can't go wrong with an invite to Buckingham Palace. Was there any kind of conversations about like being on like a diplomatic flight or anything like that? Did they help you out with a couple of doubloons to get over here?
Nah, it wasn't that good, unfortunately. I did have to pay for my own flight.
Right, okay.
Which I should have been like, can I get like a flight? Can I come over with the
this
Emperor on his plane?
Exactly. This is your duty. Luggage. Yeah, like in the back. Yeah,
in the luggage. I mean, like I did. Obviously, I did come back just for this, but I got to see friends and family and sort of pair it up with a few things. So it wasn't like a completely desperate return. Yeah, it wasn't a completely desperate return to London to do this, but it mostly was. It mostly was. But
he signed some books. He signed some books in the Waterstones, I remember. That was good.
I did. Yeah, I walked into Waterstones. The manager there, James. So James was really nice and spotted me and asked me to sign some books. Because obviously, when the book was doing really well in April, I wasn't in the UK, so it was nice to go over there and see the book still doing well. But anyway,
he was moving all of his books to the front of
we're putting these in the bin.
Shelf.
We're pulping these. Do you want to sign them? But the response from folks when you tell them that you're going to see the King or the Emperor is bonkers, especially when it comes to the Emperor, because the Emperor is quite a mysterious figure in Japan. I feel like they keep their heads down a bit more than the British royal family. Both the UK and Japan are constitutional monarchy, but I feel like the British royal family is a lot more public in the things it does. And obviously the Emperor in Japan is seen as like a descendant of the gods, so there's that sort of component there. Whether people believe that or not, it's more just there's a sort of magical mysticism almost around the Emperor. And
when they gave up in the war, and they sort of remember there was that big sort of stressful thing where the head of the army wanted to keep fighting, and the Emperor basically had been told to give up by the politicians, I believe, and then they recorded that record. They recorded two versions of this. They basically committed the Emperor's voice to not wax cylinder but vinyl. If the army general had gotten hold of one of the copies of the records, or both copies of the records, Japan may never have given up the war because the Emperor was the one to basically say we're giving up. But when people heard the recording of his voice, nobody had ever heard how he spoke, and it was very old school kind of Japanese, and obviously our royals are very sort of posh and RP, but nothing compared to how oldie-timey the Japanese form of the Emperor's speech was. So I mean, presumably you did sort of say hello and a couple of dignified words with Emps, as I call him. Does he speak any differently to any of the Japanese? Is it kind of, has he been modernised over the years?
I mean, I've never been that good at Japanese accents. I think he spoke fairly normally, to be fair. But yeah, I love that story of how no one knew what the Emperor was saying at the end of the war there because of his royal pronunciation. We'll get to that in a minute, but I'll try and do this story chronologically. Because so many, it's all a bit of a. It feels like it didn't happen. It feels like a weird, dreamy thing. Well, I got to the UK and I did the stupidest thing, even though I had like a month's heads up and I booked the flight quite early on. Right, when you get the invite, it says a few things on it, and one of them is white tie dinner jacket, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I'm sure it's easy to get hold of one. It's not. Don't leave that to last minute. Don't ever leave getting a tuxedo jacket thing to the last minute when you've got to rent one, because I wasn't going to buy one for something that I'm probably not going to have to get again. But like, yeah, I got to the UK and I was like, oh shit, I haven't got a suit yet. I better try and get one. I tried like three places and they were like, you can get it next month. You can get it next year. It was like, what the fuck? Am I really going to end up not being able to go to Buckingham Palace because I didn't have the fucking foresight to grab a white tie dinner jacket in advance, far enough in advance? But luckily I managed to find a friend of mine recommended a place called Oliver Brown. If you ever end up in this weird situation needing a white tie, I don't know what white tie dinner jacket is.
If you've been invited to a palace in London by a Japanese emperor, if you ever find yourself in this situation, this is where to get a bizarre piece of clothing. Yes, I'll write that down, Chris. You know what, Chris? I'll write it on my hand because it happens so often.
Have you ever worn a white tie dinner jacket, three-piece
No,
suit?
because I didn't go to fucking Eton. But it is. But I guess these people do have assistants. The sort of people who get invited to this sort of thing do have assistants who will, sort of see this sort of thing off in the distance. But yeah, I mean, white tie, white shirts, blue jeans, big long beards. I mean, it's an astonishing look, isn't it? Really, it's a weird affectation of the upper classes. The old white tie, white shirt thing.
Yeah, I look like the Duke of Wellington or something. It looked pretty. To be fair, it fit quite well when all was said and done. I went to Oliver Brown Nice place in London, Sloane Square, if you ever want to go. And I walked in, and the staff recognised me. The guy who was fitting my suit was like, "Oh my God!" He was a really nice guy called Adam, and he was like, "Oh my God, I'm coming to Japan. I've been watching all your videos," and it was kind of awesome, but also a bit awkward because I'd optimistically said, "Oh yeah, 32-inch waist trousers." Trying to fit them on.
Yes.
And I was like Father
Brilliant.
Christmas trying to get into like kids' trousers. It just fucking didn't work. And it was bad. And I was like, "Okay, Adam, lovely meeting you all, but can I have 34-inch trousers?"
Can you keep a little secret about my tum-tum? How tight can this cummerbund go?
It was bad. But like after the trousers, everything else fit quite well. And I was quite happy.
Yeah.
I never really liked wearing suits that much, but actually it came together quite nicely. I was very, very relieved. I got that the night before the event, and it was very last
Look
minute.
good, man.
So Oliver Brown, fucking amazing. Thank God for saving my life. And so on the invite, it's like... And also the next thing I didn't really know, because it's not overly explained on the invite, is how do you get into Buckingham Palace? What happens? Is there like a backdoor entrance? I didn't think, we'll go through the front gate. We'll go right, there'll be like a tool shed or something around the back I'll have to sneak into. I don't know. And on the invite, it was like... you get like a little sticker and you put the sticker on the front of the car, and it's like, "For your chauffeur, put the sticker on their window, and we have a fine supper ready for your chauffeur." And I was like, "Chauffeur, eh?" To be fair, in hindsight, I should have just got you to do it. That would have been really funny.
Got me to do it. Well,
Shit.
I was driving out of London at work like last week, and I saw what I think was the procession of the Japanese emperor, because there was like loads of motorcycles, loads of police and stuff.
Yeah.
Then some kind of dignitary's car, and I think I clocked the Japanese flag. I think I did. And obviously, emperor pulled up beside me, and went, "Essentially, nice choice, the G50."
That takes me back.
What model is it? Yeah, it's the 2000 model Emp. I'm so sorry, I should have got a new one. But never mind, I'll send you one.
That's brilliant. To be fair, me rocking up in your car would have been quite the statement, because there was a lot of Japanese royal family there, and they'd be like, "What the fuck is a Toyota Century doing in London?" I remember that. Yeah, that would be really cool.
And you're like, "Do not talk to anyone. Do not talk. You
Don't
are
ruin this, Pete.
Do not talk to anyone. You are a peasant. A peasant."
Oh my God. Damn, that's a missed opportunity. Although they did search the cars thoroughly if you were a chauffeur.
Right.
So probably a good thing. They'd have been like, "Oh, sorry, sir, your car's drenched in fucking coolish ice cream. You can't drive in."
There's too much filth in the back of the car.
To be fair, when I was in your car, I opened like one. There's lots of cool little gadgets and gizmos in your Century, and I was on the back seat, and I like flicked open a button, and there were like 500 cigarette butts and a pile of ash in there randomly. I was like, "Oh, Natsuka's been here, or someone powerful."
Got relaxed.
So I looked into getting a chauffeur. It was like £400. It was like £100 an hour. And I was like, I think
I could have driven you. That would have been hilarious. Come on.
Hindsight is a powerful thing.
Lordy.
Again, the risks of driving in with you kind of outweigh the rewards of driving in with you. So anyway.
Hey, I'm not jet lagged. I've not been through loads of turbulence. I'm fine.
But I just rented a taxi in the end. So that was kind of nice and easy. A lot cheaper. And so the taxi turns up at Buckingham Palace, and sure enough, the whole front of Buckingham Palace, in front of the wall, there was like gates and like hundreds of police, and the taxi driver sort of managed to get through, and I sort of showed my invite. It was all really kind of trippy, because there must have been like 200 or 300 people with cameras and things, and there was nothing for them to look at other than me getting out of a taxi. It was kind of awkward. I was like,
haggling over a tip.
What? I didn't know whether to wave or not. I sort of just nodded. I sort of went, "Oh yeah,
hello." Yeah,
and sort of bundled in through the front. And again, like really trippy to walk up to and this was the front of Buckingham Palace. So we did go in through the front gate, and there was just a police officer there. Showed them the invite, checked the ID, and we were in. And that was it. You're in Buckingham Palace, standing in front of the big door at the front, kind of wondering what the fuck is going on. It just felt like
I was whenever I've been to like the House of Lords or the House of Commons or even the Palace, like and obviously I've only done it a couple of times, but like it is kind of surprisingly. You show someone an invite and then you're in, kind of like they'll give you a cursory little mirror underneath your car to check for a car bomb, but like other than that, like there's nothing really that they you've got an invite, they understand why you're there, and obviously presumably they've got pictures of you as well, so it's kind of I'm always sort of surprised how basic it all is, I suppose.
Wait, so you've been to the palace? You've been inside the palace?
There was like some function. I didn't see anybody important.
You didn't tell us this.
I didn't see anyone important.
Oh,
It was like a radio thing back in the day. It's like, I don't think I would have seen anyone important. I didn't see anyone important. It would have been some minor royal doing some minor speech about some minor cause close to their heart, but it certainly wouldn't have been in the Great Chamber or anything like that.
You never know. King Charles might love Absolute Radio back in the day, or XFM, but
not with those fingers.
Did you find Buckingham Palace to be very impressive? The interior.
Yeah, but it's all like those kind of stately homesy kind of places, and you just it's a bit like when you go I went to Graceland once and they don't let you upstairs, and I was always very impressed with how humble Graceland was. You know, Elvis's home. It made me like Elvis more because his house wasn't like a sprawling metropolis. It was just a relatively small rich person's house. And but you do sort of go, right, we're not allowed upstairs. I bet there's some great stuff upstairs. You know what I mean? Like I bet there's some absolutely banging rooms upstairs. So you are a little bit like, I just want to explore. I want to take my clothes off. I want to run around like the film Saltburn.
Have you been watching too much Saltburn? What's going on here?
Saltburn.
Bloody Saltburn. My God.
Yeah.
My God. But we went in and got your champagne. You get like a little seating plan. And it's a pretty impressive seating plan. You know, I think Charlotte was sat next to like the CEO of AstraZeneca and the CEO of NTT Docomo was there. And the head of MI6.
They could have got you some sleeping pills.
Yeah, it's true. It was a who's who of like very important, powerful people, and then just Chris Broad, YouTuber, and it was I felt like I thought there would be other YouTuber-y people. I thought there'd be other influencers or maybe some actors or someone sort of famous, and there was nothing really. There was no one apart from Andrew Lloyd Webber. The guy who writes all the West End shows, the musician, but that was the only, and then everyone else was sort of a politician or a royal family member.
That's awesome. So like you are the preeminent sort of influencer kind of. You know, you'd think that like someone else might have got an invite, but it was just you and Charlotte. How did Charlotte, not being from Britain, how did Charlotte sort of take the whole palace experience?
She enjoyed it a lot, I think. She really enjoyed it. She, she's quite conservative with her opinions, doesn't really speak that much about what she seems to think, but she was like, kind of impressed by it and awed by it. And it was kind of awkward, like, standing in the room before shaking hands and going into the banquet hall. You sort of have a champagne and you stand around, and I didn't really know what to do. I've never been that good at networking events. I used to go to, like, all sorts of networking events, and it's always a bit awkward just going up to random people and being like, what do you do? Wow, yeah. And I spoke to a few people.
Of Japan, Chris.
Yeah, I'm the Emperor of Japan. I run a billion-dollar pharmaceutical company. I run MI6. I've got a YouTube channel and a podcast with Pete Donaldson. It's like, the
Sunday Times bestseller. Sunday Times bestseller. That's how you get in.
That, yeah. But it was really interesting. I noticed there was a sort of dividing line. As I've always said, people over 45 don't seem to know what YouTube is. And if you go, I'm a YouTuber, they go, oh, yes, look, there's a sandwich over there. And it's just sort of the conversation's over. Sometimes people are interested and intrigued, but for the most part, I think people, especially in the UK, upper middle class or whatever, don't watch a whole lot of YouTube and don't know what that is. But I did have, weirdly, a lot of the staff, people working at the event, whether it was like a soldier or a waiter or just people working there, they all came up to me because they're younger. They're like in their 20s or 30s. And at least 4 or 5 members of staff throughout the night came up and said, we watch Abroad in Japan. And that was kind of cool. So the dividing line, 45, I maintain it's around there.
So Downton Abbey, all of the people downstairs are very much your
that's
people.
Right.
And the people upstairs aren't.
The downstairs folk, who I can relate to as somebody who, used to work in a castle and worked on these sort of lavish events on the other side of the fence, But, it felt a bit awkward being that networking point, and I didn't really want to go up to people. And I sort of looked left, and there's Rishi Sunak, like 5 metres away. There's Keir Starmer. There's David Cameron. All former prime ministers, future prime ministers, current prime ministers, and then so the doors like swung open, and gradually people moved out into this other room, and so I was like, oh, it must be the state banquet. And also at this point, I didn't know if I was going to meet the king, the emperor. I didn't know this was going to happen. I thought, oh, it might happen, and because Charles has been sick the last year with cancer, unfortunately, I thought, well, surely he's not going to be shaking hands or doing much, because fair play, he needs to rest. But no, the door swung open, and I put my empty champagne on the tray, and poked my head round the corner. He was there greeting people. I was like, oh my God, I'm actually going to meet the king. And so it was King Charles, then the emperor, then the empress, then Camilla, queen consort. And I was like, oh fuck, I've got to meet people, and I've got to talk, and oh my God, I haven't thought of what to say or what to do. And there was like a guy at the door who could see I was like a little bit panicked, one of the members of staff, and I was like, what do I say? What do I do? And he's like, just call them Your Highness when talking to them, and that's pretty much it. So I didn't have to bow or anything like that. There was no bowing, or I think I did bow to the emperor though. But and just behind me in the queue was Keir Starmer, who, for those of you who don't know, should be prime minister in about 7 days' time or something. And he was very nice, so I got to talk to him after that. But so I walked in, and they take your invite. They read out your name and what you do. So invites is like, in my case, Chris Broad, I am YouTuber.
Do they shout it like Dwight Schrute in The Office? Chris Broad, YouTuber!
And it's a shame. It should have been Sunday Times bestseller. I feel like that would have carried more weight to the royal family. But anyway, and King Charles was like, oh gosh, you're a YouTuber, are you? And he shook my hand. It was like, it's just really trippy, because all of a sudden you've gone off the street from a cab into a lavish room, and you're shaking hands with King Charles III about half a foot away from his face, and it's just like, this is really weird. What's going on? And the vlogger in me was like, God damn it, if I had a camera, if I could have filmed this, which you're not allowed to take photos in Buckingham Palace, if I could just put out my camera and be like, can you just say a few words to camera? But obviously, you don't want to do that.
He just does a hock tour. Like, I didn't expect this. Prince Charles has gone mad.
He's really nice. He's very, very affable. Speaking from one affable to another, he was very affable. He was very good at it, as somebody...
He's been doing this for a long time, hasn't he?
He's got a lot of experience.
He's been kind of in waiting, and now he's... I can understand why they sort of went, just shake hands and call him Your Highness, because they're always going to lead. It's always their responsibility to sort of go, oh, no, what's going on, all that stuff. And you don't really have to sort of go... Hey, Charles, like the worst thing if you would have started going, started sort of asking the questions and stuff. It's not for you to say. He's the king.
Yeah, but he was very sort of confident and friendly and inquisitive. And when you meet sort of important people, you kind of make a snap judgment on how good they are with dealing with people. And I think about it often, because when I do like book signings, I meet 150 people and I have to talk to them. And the most important thing when you're in that situation is making the person you're speaking to feel like they are the centre of your attention, right? The undivided attention. You're not looking off elsewhere. You're there in the moment talking to them. And, I felt that with him. He was very easy to talk to. And we talked a little bit. I said something like, I have to say, good news is, in rural Japan, where I used to live, the British royal family is very popular, and it's, it has a lot of weight to it still. And he was very happy to hear that. Unsurprisingly. And I judged that off a recent trip to Yamagata, where I was with Natsuki and some others, and with these like punk rock guys, and they were like, oh, we love the British royal family, which was ironic given that...
Go and save the Queen!
Punk, yeah, I know, I was thinking the punk rockers like them. But I find in Japan the British royal family does carry a level of respect and admiration, and so it was nice to report that to him. As for the Emperor, I can't remember what I sort of went up to the Emperor next, and it was just like equally as trippy. And I said in Japanese, "Oaidekite koe desu," which means to meet you, it's an honour, right? Oaidekite, to be able to meet you, koe, an honour. But I think I screwed up the word koe, because I was so nervous. I think I was like, "Oh, I dicked it," and I think he was like, "Go on, you can finish." And I was like,
"Yeah,
coitus," and he was like, "Oh yeah." And it's like a sick. It was ridiculous, and so that was nice. And shook his hand, and then it was the Empress, and. I said the same thing. Luckily, I'd mastered the art of saying, "Oh, I dicte coitus" this time, so it was a lot more natural. And then I met Camilla, and she sort of said, "Oh, you're one of these YouTubers, are you?" I was like, "I am indeed." I didn't really know where to go from there. Like, yes, I make videos in my bedroom. It's great. You should check them out. But I just sort of said, "Yeah, and I sort of thanked her for the evening." As though it was her that had invited me.
Like she put it on.
Yeah, I was like,
She cooked olive oil.
I know, I was like, well, thank you for having me here. I think it's going to be a fine evening indeed. As though I'd walked into her house and she was cooking dinner.
Love, what's going on?
And she was like, "Oh, yeah, okay." And it didn't really, she seemed very nice. And then a man sort of grabbed me and was like, "Okay, it's time for you to go off this way now.
Get away from
there.
That. You're grabbing her arm too tight. Stop making a fool of yourself." Oh man, that's awesome. So that was just like the entranceway, and then what happens then? Just a big bit of dinner.
So yeah, and then Charlotte and I walked down this big hallway, and it's the hallway where they film the royal family and the emperor arriving into the banquet hall. We walked down there, and I was one of the first people into the banquet hall, and you don't sit next to your sort of partner. You don't sit next to your accompaniment. They get your accompaniment. Is that the word? You don't get to sit next to them. They put them elsewhere. And so Charlotte sat further down the table on the other side. I didn't really see her for the rest of the evening. And they have guy girl as well. So they sort of sit you between. Yeah. And I sat next to I sat next to King Charles's private secretary, who's lovely, a really nice lady, and. I had a good old chat with her. But before that, while I was standing there sort of waiting around sheepishly for things to happen, one of the other people I was in the room with was Keir Starmer. As he walked in, and I was just like, "Oh fuck," I'm in Tokyo cheering you on. Good luck with everything. It's going to be great. I think I cracked a few jokes about Nigel Farage being a dickhead, which I think he enjoyed. And it was cool to meet the guy who's going to be the Prime Minister in a couple of weeks, and someone who I am sort of actually hoping wins as well. So that was nice. I said I'd shout him out on YouTube, which I probably won't do. I'll give you a shout out, mate, innit?
That's the big. That'll get him over the line, Chris. I think.
I said,
what was the food? Just a bit of chicken, bit of lamb. Is it because usually when you go to I would say if you go to the Brits or the Brit Awards. You get a choice of veggie, chicken, maybe a bit of lamb if you're lucky. And I remember asking Boy George this: "Have you gone chicken or veg?" And he went, "Well, I'm actually veggie. Actually, so I don't actually eat meat." I was like, "Oh God." Remember when you changed a man to a reindeer? I would say that I imagine the choices are a little bit wider at the palace.
I mean, you tell them in advance if you've got an allergy or not, and or what you eat if you're vegan, vegetarian. Yeah. In my case, I think it was prawns. The menu's all in French. Weirdly, I don't know. That's a royal family thing, an upper class thing. I don't know, but it was all in French.
A Japanese thing.
Yeah, there was no English or no Japanese. There was no Japanese or English, so I didn't know what the dickens I was eating most of the time.
Right.
But it looked like prawns, and then it looked like white fish, and it looked like a panna cotta wrapped in chocolate, as far as I could tell.
Wow.
But one thing is, when you're sitting there eating, you're in chat, you're talking to people around you, and every 5 seconds, a member of staff dips in, and they're either giving you food or another glass of wine. You have 4 glasses of wine, different. There's red wine, white wine, the dessert wine. And every time I was speaking with the private secretary, Muna, who's lovely, as I said, she every time I just get interrupted, and a glass of wine would come past my face and slam down the table, and it was a bit like a sketch, like a Monty Python sketch or something, where you can't actually have a conversation. But no, it was a nice meal, and surreal to sit in there and hear the king and the emperor give speeches and whatnot. And King Charles giving a speech about Pokemon and Hayao Miyazaki, which went down pretty well, I think.
Really? Wow.
And then at the end of it, you go out and you get to have coffee and champagne. And one surprise was a local politician in Kent, actually. Greg Clark came over, and I think he was the former one of the business secretaries or quite high up in the government. And he was a viewer of the channel, and he sort of said how he loves coming to Japan and he watches All Abroad in Japan videos, which made me quite embarrassed, and that was nice. And then it was he that introduced us to David Cameron. David Cameron was sort of on his way out the room. For those of you who don't know, former British Prime Minister who instigated Brexit, so he's not overly in my good books, but he was very polite and courteous when we had a chat. He was fairly easy to talk to, and we talked a little bit about Shinzo Abe and sort of his surprise at how everything had unfolded in Japan. From one former prime minister to another, I think he was sort of shocked at everything that had happened, and we talked a little bit about that. But and then that was it. And then before you know it, you're out on the street again, looking at Buckingham Palace, thinking, "Wow, I'm nothing once more. I'm back out."
Did you have your taxi driver waiting for you? Did he come back and pick you up?
I had to hail a cab like a pen.
Yeah, you had to. So you walked out of the gates and just get an Uber?
Yeah,
get on
not even an Uber.
Get on a line bike.
I think I did get an Uber, actually. I think I did get an Uber. I was one person I didn't get to talk to who would have been cool, who I realised I was standing next to at one point for quite a while. I was drinking champagne after the event, drinking some cocktails and coffee, and then I realised Prince William was just standing there, just having a chat next to me, and I was like, man, would love to go and say something. But again, how do you open that conversation? Like, Your Highness, how you doing? I've got a book, and you haven't read it, and I've got a YouTube channel, you haven't watched it. But if you come to Japan, I will get you all the Family Mart chicken your heart desires. Don't you worry.
We'll sort that hair out as well.
Oh, no.
There's a fork in the road, brother, and you just have to take the right road. That's amazing. Like I would say, like I would never. You would never catch me. There's two people in this world. I think there's two kinds of people in this world.
There's two kinds of people.
There are people who will sort of go, right, this is my opportunity to talk to this person, and this is my opportunity to improve my life. And then there's people like me sort of going, nobody wants to talk to me, so I'm not going to talk to them. And that's very much how I would play it. So I wouldn't have spoken to any of these people. And if I did, I would have fucked it all up.
Did you see the football game? Did you see the football game?
I've been watching the Euros, Wills.
That's the British way in, isn't it? Talking about football.
Yeah,
but and then we're off and away the next morning, and it was all very surreal, but very cool. And I mean, like I said, it feels a bit weird because people were congratulating me, but I felt like I hadn't done anything. Like I just got an invite, and I turned up in a suit at last minute, and things happened. But I guess for me, it was kind of cool. It was like the culmination of lots of awesome things. I don't even know how I ended up there. I think somebody at the embassy, either the British embassy or the Japanese embassy, recommended me or put my name forward, and then they checked me over. I did speak to someone there, and they were like, "Oh, we had to watch your videos to check you weren't mental before coming to the event."
A fervent anti-monarchist.
Yeah, and so they said, "But you were good" or something. And we let you in.
Right.
Oh, that's great. It's good to hear. But
Natsuki can never come here.
Please don't invite Natsuki.
Can never. Natsuki and Connor can never come to the. Can you
imagine? Can you imagine Natsuki going to Buckingham Palace? I don't think I could watch it unfold. I don't think I could see it. That'd be terrifying. But really awesome. And thank you to everyone listening or watching who sort of wished me well on this whole thing. And
it's good to get a bit of food, and beer with you, very very briefly. So it was good to see.
Yeah, there's meeting the royal family, and then there's meeting Pete Donaldson, and they're equal in compare, equal people in power.
Correct.
Status.
Fervent environmentalist Pete Donaldson with his V12.
With his car that single-handedly commits more greenhouse gases than all the vehicles in the UK
ULEZ
combined.
Compliant, I'll have you know. Have some respect. I could have driven you through London and I wouldn't have had to pay the ULEZ. All right?
Oh, God. But that is all for now, though, guys. As always, many thanks for watching and for listening to the Abroad in Japan podcast. I'm sure this won't be the last we hear about this. I don't want to keep bringing it up, though. I saw Connor and Pete lamenting thing that I'm always going to be like, it's like the time I went to Buckingham Palace. And
do you reckon Connor would have got an invite, but they took one look at his content and he's just, getting like wrestling people. He's like got his top off and stuff.
I don't know. He
does a lot more grot, doesn't he?
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Some people I spoke to said they checked a few YouTubers and. They didn't really say anyone else. They just said,
I wouldn't. It was you and Johnny Somali. And Charles tried to talk to Johnny. Somalia, I spent a lot of time in Africa. No, this is not what I'm about. I'm going to set fire to one of your bathrooms.
Oh, God. In an alternate reality, things could have gone very differently. Very differently indeed. But for now, guys, as always, many thanks for tuning in. We'll see you later in the week, right back here, to do it all over again on the Abroad in Japan podcast. Bye for now. Have a good one.
Farewell.